Okay. So my question for you is, what is your name and where are you from?
My name is World Famous Bob, and that is my legal name. I go by Bob, which is technically my last name. And where I'm from is a multi-leveled answer. I am a New Yorker that was born in California and lives in Austin, Texas.
Awesome. And to kind of roll off that question, when and where were you born?
I was born in 1972 in California, in Kern County.
And so could you tell me a little bit about your childhood? What did your education look like? What did your communities as a child look like? Would love to hear more about that.
Sure, yeah. Until I was 5, we lived in Taft, California, which is I don't have a lot of memories of that, because I was so young. And then we moved to the central coast of California, which is really, really beautiful. And we lived right outside of a town called Paso Robles, which is known for its cattle ranches and vineyards. So lots of rolling hills, lots of cows, lots of beautiful wildflowers. It's about 4 hours from LA and 4 hours from San Francisco. So it's a really nice nestled right, about 20, 30 minutes in from the coastline. So my childhood was a lot of roaming, acres and acres and acres with trees and my dogs, and going to the beach on the weekend, and just a lot of nature, which I'm really grateful for.
That's amazing. And I'm so curious, so what did your communities as a child look like outside of your family? Which communities did you call home?
We did not have a lot of, we were a little bit, my parents were very, my parents kept to themselves, and we lived on 115 acres, and our nearest neighbor was quite a ways away. So, and biological family didn't live nearby. And my parents were both very kept to themselves. So we didn't have a religious community. We weren't a part of a larger community. We were pretty private, kept to ourselves. But the community I really liked were my classmates. I loved school. I loved school. I still do. I still go on and off whenever there's courses I want to take. And I loved the community of school, and I loved the community of when our teachers would put us together to do different projects. And that's kind of when I had the chance. I'm a very community focused person. So growing up with a household that was very private and didn't go traveling or exploring a lot, or didn't have a lot of friends, was a little difficult for me. So once I got to school, you couldn't stop me. I would just walk up to people and say, "Hey, do you want to be my friend?" And then I'd organize bake sales to raise money for the animal shelter. I've always been this way. I've always been a community organizer, and I've always really loved people. So I had a little bit of a challenge with where I came from, but I still found a way.
That's amazing. And I'm so curious, could you tell me a little bit more about your educational journey?
Mm, hmm Yeah, I went to grade school, high school, all of that. After my first year of high school, I actually left home. I left home when I was 15 and a half, and there was a lot of violence and dysfunction in my house, and there weren't a lot of resources or solutions. Being isolated, there weren't a lot of people to intercede and kind of help. So I left home very young at 15 and a half, and as a result, I did not finish high school until I was 40. But by the time I was 40, I realized that I was still thinking about it and that it meant something to me. And so I went and got my GED. And then when I was 42, I started my college education. And I just flew back this past June. It's September now? Wow. To walk in my LaGuardia Community College graduation. So exciting. I grabbed one of my biggest wigs, and I bought my airline ticket, and I walked to my college graduation. I have an associate's in gerontological studies, which is the study of aging in society. So it's what it means to age in society and the sociological perspectives of being an older adult in America. America's the lived experience I have, but I'm also interested in other cultures and how older adults are revered differently usually than in America. Um, so I have my associates now, and I just completed a certification course on thanatological studies, which is the study of death. And it's the emotional, spiritual, biological, and social study of death. So it was a 6-month course, and it was really, really interesting. It was everything from death doulas to rabbis to funeral home directors. To me, it's really the people who hospice, a lot of hospice workers, a lot of nurses, a lot of different types of people who work in palliative care, um, natal, like natal unit, intensive care units, NICU, and just these people that I can't believe this is their job that they go to every day. And the New York Open Center put together this beautiful 6-month-long course, and each topic had a different expert from that field. And I just loved hearing their stories and learning about their career and what they're doing. I have a lot of fascination with end of life care because I feel like in America, that's the reason why, I took this. I was joking with my friends, oh, I went to death school, but it's more about how we hold each other in that special transitional time, right? And there's such a taboo of talking about death or end of life care, even in this country, that I feel like it's something that would really serve us well if we kind of push past that taboo and really opened up ourselves to how we want to be cared for when we're older or when we're near our transition of leaving our body, and also how to care for people. So that is my latest educational adventure.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, and congratulations, huge congratulations for walking across that stage this past June. That's so exciting, such a milestone.
Thank
so inspiring.
you. Yeah, I was 50 when I got my college graduation, and I'm looking into where I want to go and get my bachelor's, and I plan on going up to my master's. And yeah, I feel just really fortunate that I have the time and space and the resources to put towards having the space and time to learn instead of using so much energy to survive. I'm at a place now in my life where I can actually apply it to other things, which is really nice.
That's incredible. And thank you so much for sharing and for taking the time to reflect and answer that question. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate the insight that you brought to that as well. And my next question, I guess, is just also, it's simultaneously a question I'd written down and a question out of curiosity. What brought you to Texas? Like what brought you to Austin, Texas?
I came to Austin, Texas for family. And it wasn't just family that was already going to move here. It was to create roots for new family, new people that were going to enter my life. Me and my husband, I call my husband my husband because he looks like a bear. He's like a big guy and he has a beard. And me and my husband met in New York City. I lived there for 21 years. I loved New York City. And we moved here a little over 5 years ago. It was called Operation Family. And his sister, who I love so much, and my niece and nephew, they lived in Bisbee, Arizona. So it was very far from Brooklyn. And his mom lived in Phoenix, Arizona. She still does, but she's retired now. And her husband travel a lot. They were emergency room nurses. So talking about caring for people. And anytime since I've been together with my husband, we've been married almost 10 years. On the 9th, it'll be 10 years. Whenever we would get vacation time, we would plan family vacations with his sister and his mom and the people that come with them, my niece and nephew and the husbands. And every time we had to leave each other, we would just cry. And I'm an Aries. I'm a very action-based person. So after about 3 or 4 years of this, I sat down with Eric and I said, that's my partner's name. I said, I think we should and Melissa, his sister, was thinking of where to move for the kids' education, because while Bisbee, Arizona is this really cute, artsy town, it's a lot of retirees and there's not a lot of resources for young people. And the schooling wasn't that great because it's not really the population. So they were always thinking about where they were going to move. And my husband does IT work for a living. So he created an Excel spreadsheet and he researched the top 16 cities in America for all of our interests. Melissa's an arts director. I like working with seniors. He does IT, good schools for the kids, good retirement for mom and dad. And he came up with a list, and it said, would you live there? Yes, no, or maybe. And anytime any of us in the group said no, it would go off the list. Excel is just so I know it's just computer stuff, but to me it's magic. I'm like, how'd that happen? And I'm not a technological person. And so after 6 months, Austin, Texas was the only city left, and everyone had been here except for me. And so Eric and I bought airplane tickets and we came out and we stayed for 4 days. And I know that sounds like a quick decision making time, but I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the nature combined with the metropolitan aspects. I loved that I could float in Barton Springs in this natural spring, home of the salamander, the Barton Springs salamander, in this beautiful sacred place to indigenous peoples while staring at skyscrapers. That nature was that close to the urban aspects of a city, and the nature was natural enough that I could soak in it. Coming from New York City, that was completely mind blowing. I would kayak in the Hudson River in this little inlet, not out with the big ships. It was part of, I volunteered with this group that was giving people free kayak experiences to try and reinforce the Clean Water Act. Say, we're using the Hudson, don't put poison in it. And my friends just thought I was crazy. They were like, no, we're not going to go kayaking in the Hudson with you, the Hudson River in Manhattan. So the idea that I could just float in this water at Barton Springs really just blew me away. And it is my favorite place here. I also really loved how friendly people are. I feel like it's authentic. It's, I can sense when people are just being polite to be polite. I feel like people are genuinely friendly here. And the sky in Texas is so beautiful and big that it was hard to believe it was the same sky. I tell people the sky in Manhattan is plaid. And they go, what do you mean? And I say, well, you can only see it in the strips of the buildings because they're so tall. And there are places, if you're up high enough, of course, in a building or on the edge of Manhattan where the sky is also beautiful. But anywhere I go in Texas, when I look up, the sky is just this huge, vast, it's just unbelievable that it's the same sky that's over New York City. So a combination of the people and the access to nature along with the culture at arm's length and the people. And then Melissa moved here as well. So my niece and nephew live here now. And instead of being Aunt Bob, who lives in New York City, I get to be Aunt Bob, who has fun sleepovers and makes pancakes, and we dress up and have costume parades. That's what I wanted. I wanted that. I wanted to be a part of their lives, not someone in their life. And so we have that now, and it's been really, really great. And my drag kids are part of my family as well. I'm a drag mother. So I'm a drag performer and entertainer. And a drag mother is someone who takes you under their wig, if you will. And for some people, it's about performance. They just teach their performance stuff. And other people, it's the houses is a reference to really rebuilding that family structure, support, and love that a lot of queer people don't find from their biological families. And so I'm the mother of the House of Famous. And our slogan is nice is the new fierce. A lot of times in drag culture, being bitchy or quick-witted, while that is a skill, it's not really our thing. So we'll get together and we'll have holiday card writing sessions for the older people in our entertainment industry and just look for ways that we can be of service as a drag family. And I have 3 of my drag kids here now. 2 moved here from San Francisco and 1 moved here from New Orleans. So on many levels, Texas has just been this great place to start the next chapter of my life.
That's amazing. And I'd love to hear more. Could you tell me more about your journey in drag performance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started go-go dancing in a nightclub in San Luis Obispo when I was 19. I had a fake ID that said I was 21. But it was kind of like acid house music, pre-rave, kind of like rave style, but the electronic, not EDM, just right before rave hit. It was that kind of music. And I went in there all dressed up in drag and a big wig and this like chiffon dress. And I demanded to see the manager. And when they came over, they had speakers in this go-go cage. I said, why do you have speakers in this cage? And they said, well, what do you suggest? I said, you should hire me to do drag and go-go dance in your cage. And I'm thinking like B-52 style to give you a visual reference, right? Like really big wigs and cool nightgowns and just to have a character in the cage. And so they did it. They gave me a job. That was my first performance gig. And then I moved up to San Francisco shortly after that, about 3 years after that. And I started working in the San Francisco nightclubs, doing little numbers here and there and working the doors, mainly go-go dancing. So the big nightclubs, the big gay nightclubs would have columns and they would have different go-go dancers on the columns. And so I would dress up in my different characters and, like a My Little Pony one weekend and a rag doll with a wig made out of licorice that I'd made myself. And just all these is really fun way for me to express myself artistically. And I also am non-binary. So I found a home in that community, in the LGBTQIA2+ community, which it didn't have that many letters back then. It did, but we just didn't know what all of that was called. And started doing drag professionally in San Francisco. And then I moved to New York in 1995 and became a nightclub personality, and then did performance art. And then my drag kind of evolved into a burlesque type personality. And then I became a burlesque star, and I've traveled all over the world doing burlesque, and it's been really, really great. And I still MC shows. I don't dance anymore, but I MC shows, which is really fun for me because I get to have a even more interaction with the audience, right? So if you're doing an act, whether it's drag or burlesque, and the two meet often, it's maybe 5 minutes, but the MC, the person who brings out each guest, gets a lot longer with the audience. So I really love it. And these are my wigs. Perfidia is my wig stylist in New York City. She's an incredible drag queen and someone I look up to. She's a bit older than me and has a lot of experience and brings that to my wigs. I still have them shipped here from New York City. And I have to say the big hair in Texas has been a hit. It's been a hit. So I still perform. I mainly MC events. I do everything from family friendly. I did the ugly dog contest at Joe's Coffee, which obviously all dogs are beautiful. It was just kind of embracing the unusual. And I used to do the Coney Island Talent Show every summer in July. And that was a 6-hour daytime event for all ages. And then I go all the way up to the spectrum of doing international burlesque festivals, which is a form of striptease. So there's a wide range where I bring my different looks and my different talents. And right now in Austin, I have a monthly Bob's Bazaar burlesque bingo. That happens at the Austin Motel once a month. And I raise money for the Kind Clinic, which is a sexual health clinic here in Austin. And they also offer gender affirming care free of charge. You don't have to prove that you're in financial need for any of the testing or any of the services, PrEP, STI testing. They help a lot of people that need a lot of help. So when one of my drag kids talked to me about their partner who's trans was getting services from them when I first moved here, I said, oh, they were just talking about how great they were. I said, okay, great. That's what I'm going to raise money for, because I like to have a focus. And so that's once a month, and it's really, really fun. People of all ages come. I would say it's more like an 18 and over vibe. But it is in a restaurant, so it's really playful. And I have a DJ and a game show set up. So it's a lot more than just bingo. It's kind of like an interactive experience.
That's amazing. That's so fun. So I'd love if you shared, like, after this call, email you, if you could share like any links or any action tools or anything that you would want to like share with an audience who may be seeing your oral history interview. Would love to spotlight those alongside your story, because I was jotting down links as you were saying them and like names of organizations, which sound so incredible and so important.
Yeah, I will. I'll send you a link. I'll send you a set of links of the people, places, and things I really believe in and the work they're doing in Austin. Sure.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Thank you so much. I really do
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then my next question for you is, and this is kind of like what kind of drew me to you and what inspired me to reach out to you, was your work with Austin's LGBT Elder Task Force. So I was curious if you could tell me a little bit more about what kind of drew you to this space, how you started working within this realm, and what that journey has looked like for you.
Sure. Thank you for asking. I moved here a little over 5 years ago, as I mentioned before. And before I moved here in New York City, I was actually a program coordinator for SAGE, which stood for Services and, well, it originally stood for Seniors Active in a Gay Environment. And it was a grassroots organization created in 1978 by a group of older LGBTQ plus people at the LGBTQ Center, which then was just called the LGBT Center. And the story has it, they were having coffee in the coffee lounge, and they said, you know, as older, I'm going to simplify and say queer. Not all people identify as queer, but for the simplicity of this conversation, that's what I'm going to use. You know, older queer people have very specific needs, and we should have our own program. So they started it, and it became one of the nation's, it became the leading national agency for programming services and advocacy. And there was an affiliate program. There were over 30 affiliates, I believe. So I've been here 5 years, about 13 years before I moved here. So about 18 years ago, I got a call asking if I wanted to do a burlesque act at their holiday party at the Gay Senior Center. Do you want to come and do a striptease at the Gay Senior Center at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? I said, I absolutely do. Yes. I don't need money. Just I'll be there. And so I went, and I knew about SAGE from the Gay Pride Parade. They always have like a bus, or, you know, a double-decker bus with people on it. And you see couples holding signs. We've been married 50, you know, or they couldn't be married then, but we've been together for 50 years, and they're holding hands. And it's just so sweet. And you see families with their older LGBT plus people. It blows my mind. So I went and I danced at this. I did like a theatrical Marilyn Monroe type number, and I sat down and had lunch with them afterwards, and I just fell in love. And I thought, you know, I was performing all the time. So one of the reasons why I wasn't back in school is because I was being flown all over the world to do my art. And I was just like, this is great. And it wasn't until I took so when I was studying for my GED, and I was 40 and I left at 15. So I had been out of school a very long time. And just even how they taught math has changed every 10 years, if not more, right? So PBS has these little things you can watch to help you learn for your GED. And so I am such a nerd. I told myself, if you watch 2 of the math things and you do your math practices, then you can watch the sociology one. And I was watching the sociology program, and they talked about gerontological studies. And I just went, wait, what? Because I've always been drawn to older people since I was 5, since my earliest memories. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is the thing. Because I didn't know what I wanted to go to college for besides writing, but I wanted to go for something else as well. And I got so excited when my husband came home. I had to show it to him on my iPhone because I didn't know how to pronounce it. I had typed it into my phone. And that's when I decided that's what I was going to go to college for. And I needed to come up with an internship. And when they talked about internships, I said, oh, I have it. And so I put together a queer turn proposal, and I went to SAGE, where I had volunteered, that's how I call it, on and off for those 13 years. And I said, I really want to queer turn here. And they said, oh, on the 6th floor, that's where all the social work interns are. And I said, no, I want to queer turn here for programming, which is like the educational events, the special events, the shows, what I got called into originally 13 years prior. And they said, we've never had an intern for programming. And I pulled out a 2-page typed up proposal of producing a variety show using participants from the Gay Senior Centers. There's 5 in New York City. There's the Bronx, there's Brooklyn, Staten Island, Manhattan, and oh my gosh, Harlem. There's 5 queer senior centers in New York City. And I said, I want to rotate the 3 months. I want to know what the year-and-a-half-year-old sage looks like. I want to know, and I pulled in a bunch of my downtown New York City performer friends and had them co-direct and help with choreography. I found a theater to give us the space for free, a 90-seat theater downtown in the East Village of New York City. Hairdressers, makeup artists, everyone wanted to help for free, everyone. And it was so much fun. And my vision was to have ages 21 to 91 on stage together to break that divide, right? And we put together this amazing show called the Holiday Extravaganza. And we had people, I think 25 to 86 in the show and everything in between. And it was a vaudeville, musicals, cabaret style, burlesque, strip teasing. It was so great. It was so great. And the audience, people come to see their friends, right? So the audience reflected that. It was people in their 20s to their 90s. And at the end of that, we raised $2,000. So at the end of my 3-month-long internship, I had created a theatrical program and led burlesque like burlesque chair. I did burlesque movements for people in wheelchairs. I just brought all these things that make me really excited to my internship. And at the end of it, I handed them a check for $2,000. And the person I was career training under put in their resignation. They were going to go work somewhere else. So I was not given the job by any means. It was a stiff competition, but I did interview. And at that point, we knew we were moving to Austin. And when the director asked me, why should I hire you if you're going to go to Austin in a year? I said, well, I want to plug all of my resources into your center. I want to bring in all of my resources, plant a bunch of seeds, and then go. And my whole point professionally was to come to Austin and find the people who would want to make a sage. So it would have been the first sage in Texas, which is incredible. And I told, when I put in my, when I told everyone I was leaving a little over a year later, I was talking to the person who was the head of the affiliate program. And she said, there's somebody in Austin who just emailed me 2 weeks ago who wants to start a sage. So I said, well, put us in touch. And we didn't, for some reason, I think she delayed getting us in touch with each other. And I went to the Austin LGBT Coalition on Aging town hall. It took me 6 months to find them. Every drag show I went to, every person I met in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, I said, do you know where the older people hang out? And they said, no. I said, well, I have to find them. I have to find them. You have to find them too. We need to be together. And they were like, okay. And finally, my friend that worked at UT sent me the link. She said, Bob, I found it. And so I went to that town hall for that organization, which I'm still a member of. And there was about 45 people. And I wore a sage t-shirt and I walked in with a clipboard and I just sat there and took notes the whole time. But right before the meeting started, somebody tapped on my shoulder and I turned around and it was Richard. He was the person who had emailed Sage. And he said, are you the Bob they said was coming here to start a sage? And I said, yes. Are you Richard? And that's how we met. I was asked at the end of that meeting if I would like to join their steering committee. I became a steering committee member. I went downstairs to the car where my husband was waiting, and I sat in the car and cried for 5 minutes. And he was nervous, like, did something bad happen? And I said, I finally found them. I found some of the people that I want to work with. And it was a big relief for me. And I instantly started putting together events. I was like, all right, let's do a storytelling event. Let's find a place. And I didn't know anyone, but I had 6 months. And so people were inspired and invested in my ideas. So Cup of Joe's gave us a room. They have a community room at that little coffee house, and they were so kind. And they gave us a room for free and then a microphone. And we had somebody in their 30s tell their story about coming out, and somebody in their 40s and somebody in their 60s. And so I'm always trying to, when I hold space or create space for people to connect or to present anything, if there's storytelling happening or sharing happening, I'm always very mindful to invite a diverse section. The intersectionality in the LGBTQIA2 plus community is huge, right? So there's so many different places where our identities can meet at corners, and to try and cover that. So no matter who comes to my event, they could see themselves up there telling a story. I got very excited when you started talking about stories. And the reason why I responded to your oral history request so quickly is because 8.5 years ago, me and my dear friend, Dusty Shoulders in New York City, started an event called Campfire Queer Storytime. And it's a monthly free event at the Dixon Place Theater, happens in the lounge, not even the theater. So we don't even need the theater space. And it's a monthly event. It's free. Nobody gets paid. Nobody has to pay to come. And it was Dusty and myself each doing 10 minutes. And then we would each invite a featured speaker. And a lot of storytelling events like the Moth and different storytelling events are great, but they do have rules, like you can or can't use notes, or there's just structure that they want you to play within. And we decided to call it story time instead of storytelling because we wanted people to be able to read their own writing or share a story. If they needed to write it down and read it, that's fine. If somebody wanted to sing songs to tell a story, if somebody wanted to talk about somebody they miss, if somebody wanted to bring an object and do show and tell for 10 minutes, it was really open-ended. The only thing we requested when we created it was to not use the time to hurt yourself or other people, to not go up there and just vent for 10 minutes, because that's not what it was about. And so we started that, and I'm going on my 3rd year of doing that here in Austin. And that's once a month at the Vortex outdoors. And I've been recording it on my phone. So I'm creating an audio archive of the queer history of Austin and the people who have come from here or ended up here. And through that, I've met so many great people. And I've also been able to create the space where a 27-year-old can run up to me and go, "Oh, I just met so-and-so. And did you know in the 70s they put glitter in their beards?" And I'm like, "Really?" I do know this because I have a lot of older friends, but it's exciting to watch those connections happen, and not in a mentor way. I think when people hear intergenerational, they think, oh, young children singing at a nursing home, which is so beautiful and needs to happen. That's not my scope. My scope is ages 18 to 110. So we started working on becoming a SAGE affiliate, and 4.5 years in, we had started working with Family Elder Care, which is a really great nonprofit here in Austin. They do the fan drive each summer. They raise money to give Central Texans in need of heat relief fans who can't afford to run their AC or who don't have working ACs. They do a lot of in-home counseling for older adults, 55 and older, or people with larger disabilities. So you can get mental health counseling for free in your home. They have a lot of incredible programs, and we started having talks with them. All of my community work for the first 4.5 years was for free. Nobody was paying me, and it's just what I love to do. And Richard and myself, with the help of the community, of course, had put together over 94 events. And so Family Elder Care, we started talking with them once a month for 2 years because we needed the Elder Task Force started because we needed to be a nonprofit in order to complete the SAGE affiliate process. So we broke off of the Austin LGBT Coalition on Aging. Their focus wasn't SAGE. And I said, I'll still be a member, but I have to leave the steering committee. And they said, you can do both. And I said, I love that you think I have that energy, but I don't, right? So Richard and I remained members and started the Austin LGBT Elder Task Force, and really with the sole purpose of completing the 18 benchmarks. It was absurd how much work went into becoming a SAGE affiliate. And Family Elder Care basically applied for a grant to the Moody Foundation to fund the first 2 years of Austin SAGE. And then it would be a program of family elder care. And with the hopes that Richard and I, of course, would have to apply, and we would have to go through a process that wouldn't be handed to us in any way, shape, or form. But the idea that we would be really great candidates for the positions because we've been doing it. You know, we joke like you'd have to fire us if you hired other people, and we've been doing it for free. How do you fire somebody who's been doing something for free for 4.5 years and is good at it, right? So they applied for the grant and we got it. And the day before they told us we got it, Sage let us know that they were ending the affiliate program. So after 4.5 years of working really hard and then finally getting a lot of money to start the Sage, a lot of money to us for a nonprofit, I'm sure it's not, but we were using our own money to, you know, the little supplies here and there for events. We were just maybe passing a hat, but usually we would just pay for it ourselves. My husband's going to walk by probably. And so I was really heartbroken, and I felt like I had had an emotional miscarriage. Not to discredit anyone who's gone through that horrible physical experience. I haven't, but it felt like this thing larger than myself that I had been laboring towards and putting all my love and time into was taken away from me. And the reason why Sage is ending all of their affiliates actually is because their strategic planning restructuring showed that the amount of time it took to become a Sage affiliate really made it only accessible to largely white people, for lack of, I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right? Like, who has 20 hours a week that they can work for free, and who has those resources and advantages. And white urban, that's where it was popping up. And they really wanted to increase the equity towards communities of color and rural communities. So they're restructuring, and they're still going to be our partner. There just won't be a Sage in Texas. When we told Family Elder Care, I thought, oh, this is it, right? Like, I'll still organize events, but this is it. Like, we're not going to be able to do this full time, which was disappointing for me. And they said, oh, just name it something else. I said, wait, what? And they said, well, we got the funding because there's a need for the needs of the older LGBTQIA2+ community in the greater Austin area to be met. And it's the third highest ratio of LGBTQ people, like per capita, how they do that. You know, they average, obviously it's not the largest because there's cities that are bigger, but it's the third largest per capita of the queer community. And the aging population is just increasing at a rapid speed because of the baby boomers. And so those needs are being pushed to the top. And the resources and the interest in taking care of those needs is not the level it needs to be to meet the demands. So they said, are you still going to do this work? I said, of course I'm still going to do this work. And they said, okay. So, you know, we let the funders know, and we've just been, since April, we've done over 30 events. We've partnered with over 9 other organizations since April. And the thing that pulled me into this work was creating a space for me and my chosen family that I want to age in, right? And highlighting the value of every stage of life. I don't think because somebody's 16, they have nothing smart to say. I think I want to listen to somebody who's 16 because they clearly have a lot to teach me. And somebody who's 80 doesn't have all the answers, you know, like to break down these social, these falsities. I volunteered with queer youth ages 12 to 25 at the Hetrick Martin Institute in Manhattan. Has a great after school program at the Harvey Milk High School. So there's an actual high school in Manhattan for gay and queer and trans kids. And if I had access to that, I wouldn't have left school. I was bullied beyond and no support at home. And that's why I left. It was easier to live in the world with no resources than to stay where I was. And so I'm a huge fan of that establishment, that organization, and the Hetrick Martin Institute helped kids who, you know, maybe they did have a good home, but their parents were busy after school. So they'd come and do the art program. And also there were counseling services and GED programs and sober events. Some of the younger adults that I became friends with, they lived in shelters. They had really, really difficult circumstances. And I learned a lot from them. And I feel like my time with them, they would often say, I feel like because I'm young, nobody listens to me. And then when I hang out with people 65 and older, I feel like I hear often, we're invisible. So if you have this one group that feels like nobody listens to them, and this other group on the other end of the spectrum who feels like nobody sees them, and all this importance in the middle, I just think if you put all of those people, again, 18 and over, in a room, then the value of each stage of life becomes really apparent, becomes really clear. There's value to every stage of life, and that we don't need to have this disconnected. Our community is under attack constantly, especially in Texas. I believe there were over close to 76 anti-trans legislation bills they tried to pass last year. The year before it was 11. So there's this increased wave of anger and hate and misunderstanding towards the trans community in Texas. And sometimes people think I'm crazy for moving to Texas from New York City, but I will say this, everyone I tell I live in Austin, they're very excited because Austin's such a favorite of so many different cultures. So many different types of people really love Austin. So Elder Task Force, we're actually having our launch in October. We're becoming Rainbow Connections ATX, and that's our new name. So it's just about creating connection through community. I know it's a long, long story. I'm sorry.
No, it's an incredible story. I was like following along the entire time. Thank you so much for sharing it with me and for like kind of really unpacking and unraveling those layers behind this narrative, because I think it's really important to recognize too that no like work of labor, like work of love really comes out of like a void. Like there's this long narrative and long story behind all of the initiatives and things that we take on as individuals and the things that we're drawn to as well. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to share that narrative and that story of how you got to where you are today with Rainbow Connections as it'll launch this fall. So exciting.
It's very exciting. Rainbow
yeah.
Connections ATX, because there's a lot of Rainbow Connections.
Okay.
We know we didn't throw a dart in the dark. We knew that was a popular name in the Kermit song. None of it's accidental, but the ATX is like the important part because that's where we are and that's who we're serving.
Absolutely. And so excited to see that launch happen of Rainbow Connections ATX. Sounds like an incredible initiative, incredible project. And a lot of what you were saying kind of at the end of this narrative is something that brings me to this final question that I have for you, which is, what does being a Texan and living in Texas mean to you as an individual?
Well, I think living in Texas and being a Texan are two different things, right? I don't think everyone that lives in Texas is a Texan. And I think there are Texans that live elsewhere. So I just want to make that distinction. I identify as a New Yorker that lives in Texas. And so I don't consider myself a Texan. So I can't really answer the question, what does it mean to me to be a Texan? What does it mean to me to live in Texas? I can answer that. To me, it means it's the start line of the new adventure in my life. I just turned 50. A lot of people, after being established in New York City for 21 years or any place for 21 years and having a lot of resources and connections and everything they could possibly need at their fingertips, a lot of people would be scared to pack up and start completely over. I knew 3 people when I moved here. And to me, there was excitement involved and there was family and connection. So living in Texas for me represents family. It represents being Aunt Bob and having sleepovers and barbecues and being with my drag kids and having those family connections that I didn't have from my original family of origin. And so when I think of Texas, I think of family, number one. And number two, my quality of life is better. I love New York City, and I encourage anyone, if you're watching this or listening and you think, I want to go to New York City and make my dreams come true, you should go. It's an incredible place. It's very magical. It's intense. It'll be the best stories of your life. I was done after 21 years, not with New York City. I still go back and I visit regularly, but I was done as far as I needed something different energetically. I couldn't see myself aging in that city. And I worked with older people who are having a hard time aging. And in New York City, you have to have exceptionally good luck and lots of connections or a lot of money to do it well. And I didn't want to really gamble with those odds. So Texas to me is family, it's community, it's a higher quality of life. I like the fresh air and being able to go on hikes, and I love to starfish. So what starfishing is for me, I don't go fishing. I stretch my arms and my legs out as far as I can in the shape of a star, and I just float on top of Barden Springs and I stare up at the full moon and listen to people howl. There's people who howl at the full moon at Barden Springs. They just start doing it. It's really fun. And to be able to take up that much space and touch nothing, to have the room to breathe and the sky to do it beneath, that's Texas to me. It's room and it's space and it's beauty.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much again for taking the time to share your story, for agreeing to participate in this interview, for having this conversation with me here today. It was really incredible just to learn more about you and learn more about your narrative, and really inspiring as well to hear your story. So before I kind of wrap up the oral history interview here today, I wanted to ask if there's anything else, any other elements of your story and your narrative that you want to share here today.
I think when I hear you say that, what my heart wants to say to anybody that's listening is we're not meant to do any of this alone. Even if you're not, and I'm a mixture of extrovert and introvert. I don't always get energy from being out in public. Even if you're a little shy or withdrawn, we're not meant to do any of this alone. And what I mean by any of this is life, right? We're not supposed to go through our joys alone or our troubles alone. And I think that's why community means so much to me, and how people participate is going to be shaped by their comfort level. But I would just like to invite anyone, I call it living in the middle. So I would like to invite anyone who's listening or watching to try to make a friend at least 20 years younger than you, and try to make a friend if you're in the middle, it's easier, right? 20 years older than you. The reason, and not a relative, not, someone you can really talk to, friend stuff, not someone you can really talk to, someone you have in your phone, someone you can text when you're feeling down. And it really changed my life when I started doing that, and made sure that I was the older person for somebody younger, and I was the younger person for somebody older. And when I was working at Sage in New York City, I'll close with this, I would ask people what it felt like to be older. I wanted to hear. And one of the participants who I had a really close connection with, so it's okay that I gave her this response. She said, well, I looked down one day, my hand was old, but I wasn't. And I thought that was so perfect. Like, it really kind of chilled me to the bone. And she said, the hardest part about getting older is all my friends are dead. And I looked at her and I said, you need younger friends. And she smiled and goes, you're right. I go, yeah. So try to live in the middle as much as we can. I think that's a good place to be. And just that we're not meant to do this alone.
Thank you so much for those closing words. And I think it was beautiful to be able to hear them as well. And to just be able to hear a little slice of your story today. It's what really keeps me going, is learning about other people, learning about their narratives, and just how they kind of fit into the narrative of the world that surrounds me. So I'm gonna stop